Hi guys, this is Dr. Perkins, and today we're going to be talking about the hepatic portal system. So what is the hepatic portal system and why do we care? Well, first off, this image was created by Henry Van Dyke Carter in Gray's Anatomy. Anyways, one of the things that will happen is when we eat our food, obviously it goes to our stomach and our digestive system. And so blood from our stomach is going into the liver, as well as the small intestines and the large intestines. Well, one of the things that will happen is a couple of things. Number one, if you're a plant, you don't want to be eaten to death by animals. And so a lot of times you'll taste poisonous, you might have thorns, but another very effective strategy is to be poisonous. And so we're eating this food, and now these poisons are going into our liver and so on, our digestive system. Well, we don't want that poison to go to our brain and kill us, or our heart, or whatever. And so our liver will break down a lot of these poisons for us before these poisons can get into the blood. Now, the liver doesn't have any way of knowing whether the stuff that's trying to get into our system is something really healthy, like vegetables, right? Here's your broccoli, or right? It has no way of knowing whether it's broccoli, whether or not it's poison. We'll do a Mr. Yucks right here, or whether or not it's medicine, right? It's going to treat all these things exactly the same. So as these things go up to the liver, whether it's good, bad, or blah, the liver is going to break them down and try to prevent them from entering our general circulation. And so this creates something called first pass. So drugs that are taken by mouth must first pass through the liver. And so the liver can destroy a good chunk of these drugs. And so when you take the same medicine by vein versus by mouth, you have to take a lot less of it to get the same effect, because you're not being broken down by the liver and it's all getting absorbed by the body. All right. So one of the things you run into is you can also run into something called a prodrug. And so sometimes drugs that are taken by mouth don't do anything. So for example, codeine. And so codeine doesn't treat pain. What happens is the codeine goes through the liver, right? We're undergoing that first pass. It's going through the liver and gets converted into morphine. Now, morphine treats pain. And so that's how the codeine turns into a very powerful pain medicine called morphine. Now, some people do this very quickly. And so we're converting large amounts of codeine into large amounts of morphine. Unfortunately, for those individuals, they can overdose on the morphine and die. Other people, they do this very slowly, and so they only have a very little amount of codeine being converted to a very little amount of morphine, and so they don't get adequate pain control. All right, and so all this is happening because of the hepatic portal system. Another thing you can run into is something called liver failure. And so let's say that you've been drinking for years and years and years, and as you can see, this liver is scarred up, right? Every time you drink, you're kind of producing another scar on the liver. Well, after a while, it doesn't take a genius to see how it's going to be very hard to get any blood through that liver at all, right? And so now, when you're taking your medicine, it can't quite get through that liver. It's very, very difficult, right? And so this is going to create very high pressure right there. Well, because the pressure is very, very high in these veins right here, fluid is going to start leaking out, right? And so now this area is starting to fill up with fluid right there. And so we're going to see this as something called ascites. So, for example, if this is your patient, right, this is how they should look right here. If they have ascites, their stomach can actually start hanging out, kind of looking like they're pregnant. It's because they have all this fluid leaking out of their portal system because of the high pressure there. Now, the other thing that will happen is when you get this backup of fluid, blood tries to get around this portal system right there. And so instead of going where it should be going, the blood will find all these bypasses to get around the liver. And so it can go through the spleen. And so what will happen is your spleen will get really big. You get a great enlargement of the spleen right here. So the spleen can dramatically get too big and start sucking up all your red blood cells and platelets. It can skip around the blood. Can also skip around right here in terms of your large intestines. And so we form another skip there, and you get hemorrhoids. And it can also skip around the esophagus. Now, there's a couple of things that's really bad about this. Number one is the whole point of putting that blood through the liver was so it could get rid of all these toxins. Well, I'm not getting rid of these toxins, and so all these toxins are going to my system and can literally make me go crazy. And so there's a fancy word for that called hepatic encephalopathy. Basically, you have disease of the brain because the liver's gone bad. All right. The other thing that can happen is you can get something called varicose veins of the esophagus. So here's your esophagus. We got this nice little blood vessel in here. We'll change color for clarity. So we got this nice little blood vessel right here, and life is good. But because of the high pressure, because the blood can't go through the liver, it's starting to get filled up with way more blood than it was ever intended to hold. So we got way too much blood in that vein in the esophagus. And so now these veins can literally start breaking, and we can literally start bleeding right in here. And unfortunately, that could be a very deadly complication. All right, and so that is why we care about the hepatic portal system. Well, I hope that was a help. If it is, let me know. And if there are any other videos you'd like me to create, please let me know. All right, look forward to seeing you in the next video. All right, goodbye.